Have you ever wondered what really happens the moment you die? Not what religion told you, not what science tries to measure, but what you might actually see when your consciousness detaches from this body. What if, in that instant, you are not free, but trapped in an illusion so perfect that you never realize it's a trap? What if the light that so many describe, that comforting glow calling them home, is not the true light of the divine, but the reflection of something else? Something designed to bring you back into the cycle of forgetfulness? Ancient Gnostic texts speak of powerful entities known as the Archons, keepers of this illusion. They are said to control not only the material world, but also the passage between life and death. And among their greatest deceptions is something called the mirror of death, a cosmic mechanism meant to seduce the soul into reincarnation by showing it what it most wants to see. It's a revelation so disturbing that even today, few dare to look into it. In this video, we will explore what the ancient Gnostics really believed about death, the soul, and the false light that awaits us beyond. You will see why the Archons worked so hard to erase this knowledge, and why remembering it could mean the difference between liberation and eternal return. Stay until the end, because what you'll discover could forever change how you see life, death, and the illusion of this world. If you're ready to uncover truths that were hidden for centuries, subscribe now and join this growing community of seekers. Together, we'll awaken the memory the Archons tried to erase. The Gnostics, those ancient seekers of hidden truth, believed that the world we see is not the final reality. They said it was a kind of dream, a simulation created by powerful beings called Archons. These Archons, they said, were servants of the Demiurge, a false god who shaped the material universe to keep souls trapped here. According to them, the Archons don't just rule this physical world. They also control what happens after death. When a person dies, most of us imagine a light waiting for us, something warm and peaceful that calls us home. But the Gnostics warned, be careful of the light that appears too quickly. They said that what looks like the light of heaven may, in fact, be the mirror of death, a reflection created by the Archons. Its purpose is not to free you, but to recycle you, to make you believe you are going home, when you are really returning to the same prison you tried to escape. To understand this better, imagine a mirror that shows you everything you long for. You see your loved ones, your happiest memories, a feeling of peace and safety. But that mirror is not real. It's a projection designed to pull your attention away from the truth. The Archons, according to ancient texts, feed on this illusion. The moment you surrender to it, you accept the path back to matter, back to forgetfulness. So why don't we know about this? The Gnostics said that the rulers of the world, both human and invisible, have always tried to bury this knowledge. Over the centuries, religious authorities called these teachings dangerous, heretical, and even evil. The reason they believed is simple. If you knew the trap existed, you could avoid it. And if enough people broke free, the system itself would lose its power. Now, this idea may sound strange, even frightening, but it also gives hope. Because if there is a trap, there must also be a way out. And that is exactly what the Gnostics tried to reveal. How to recognize the false light and find the path to the true source, the real divine light that cannot be imitated or controlled. In the next block, we will explore where these ideas came from. You'll see what the ancient Gnostic scriptures, like the Pistis Sophia and the Apocryphon of John, really said about what happens after death and how the Archons use illusion to keep humanity asleep. Long before modern religions shaped our ideas of heaven and hell, the Gnostics wrote about the soul's journey after death. In their writings, like the Apocryphon of John and the Pistis Sophia, they described what happens when the soul leaves the body. They said the soul rises through different layers, or realms, ruled by the Archons. Each Archon tries to stop the soul from going higher. They ask questions, confuse it, or make it feel guilty. Their goal is to make the soul forget who it truly is. To the Gnostics, the soul is a spark of the true divine, pure and eternal. But when it comes into this world, it forgets its origin. The Archons keep this forgetfulness alive through fear, desire, and illusion. When you die, they use the mirror of death to show you comforting images. Your family, a light that feels safe, a promise of peace. But according to these teachings, that light is a trap, a reflection made by the Archons to lure the soul back into another life, another body, another round of suffering. Think of it like waking up from a dream, only to be tricked into falling asleep again. The Gnostics believed that most souls are caught in this endless circle, lifetime after lifetime, because they don't recognize the trick. Only those who carry gnosis, true inner knowledge, can see through the illusion. In the Pistis Sophia, for example, the soul of a woman named Sophia becomes trapped in the lower worlds. She cries out to the true divine light for help. Her story symbolizes what happens to all of us. We get lost in the shadows, mistaking reflections for truth. But Sophia is eventually freed, not by power, but by remembrance. She remembers where she came from. That memory breaks the illusion. For the Gnostics, this was the key. Remember who you are. When the soul knows it is a fragment of the true divine, the Archons lose control. Their mirrors cannot fool it anymore. The light they offer no longer looks beautiful. It looks false. And when the soul refuses the mirror, it continues upward toward the real source, the true living light that no Archon can imitate. In the next block, we'll uncover why the Church and later systems of power tried to hide these teachings, and how this ancient warning about the mirror of death was replaced with the comforting story of going into the light. To understand how the knowledge of the mirror of death was erased, we have to look at what happened 2,000 years ago, when Gnostic teachings began spreading across the ancient world. In the early centuries after Christ, there were many groups of early Christians. Some followed the teachings of the apostles literally, believing that salvation came through faith in the material resurrection and the authority of the church. But others, the Gnostics, taught something radically different. They said that salvation was not found through a priest, or a temple, or obedience to laws. It was found through inner awakening, through remembering one's divine origin beyond the material universe. This difference was enormous. The Gnostics believed that the physical world was not created by the true God, but by a lesser being, the demiurge, the ruler of illusion. They described him as arrogant and blind, claiming to be the only God, when in truth he was a fragment of a higher reality. His servants, the Archons, managed this world like cosmic wardens, keeping souls trapped through ignorance and desire. To the Gnostics, this meant that the salvation taught by organized religion, submission to the world's authorities, blind belief in rituals, and acceptance of suffering as divine will, was actually a continuation of the same trap. Imagine how threatening that message was to those who built their power on fear and obedience. If people believed they could connect directly to the divine through their own consciousness, the entire system of control would collapse. The Gnostics didn't need temples or priests. They didn't even see death as something to fear, only another veil of illusion. And so, as the new church began to grow in power during the 2nd and 3rd centuries, Gnostic writings were declared heresy. Their scrolls were burned. Their leaders were hunted. Their teachings were rewritten to look dangerous or demonic. By the time the Roman Empire officially embraced Christianity, the old Gnostic knowledge had nearly disappeared. But it didn't vanish completely. Some fragments survived, buried in jars in the Egyptian desert, hidden by monks who feared they were preserving forbidden truth. In 1945, near the town of Nag Hammadi, those forgotten texts were finally rediscovered. Inside were books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Apocryphon of John, and the Hypostasis of the Archons. In those pages, we find descriptions of what happens when the soul leaves the body and how false lights, false voices, and false gods attempt to pull it back into forgetfulness. These texts say something very different from what most people believe today. They suggest that after death, the soul does not go to a heaven or hell created by the same God who made this world. Instead, it passes through layers of deception, through the territories of the Archons, until it reaches the real divine realm, which lies beyond the physical universe. Each layer tests the soul's awareness. The more it remembers its true origin, the less power the Archons have over it. Over the centuries, the story of the light at the end of the tunnel slowly replaced the Gnostic warning. What was once seen as a trap became a symbol of comfort. The mirror of death, the false reflection created to lure souls back into the cycle, became the welcome home light people are taught to move toward. The Gnostics would say this change was not accidental. It was part of a spiritual cover-up, a way to ensure that souls remain obedient to the system of reincarnation, always returning, always forgetting, always trapped. But we can still feel the echo of the old truth. In some near-death experiences, people report seeing a light that feels peaceful at first, but later say it seemed cold, or that it was trying to draw them in against their will. Others describe sensing that they were being watched, guided, or questioned by unseen beings. To the Gnostics, these are not hallucinations. They are memories of what happens beyond the veil. The suppression of this teaching wasn't just about spiritual belief. It was also about control over human minds. If death could be turned into a mystery controlled by institutions, then fear could be used to govern the living. The promise of heaven and the threat of hell created obedience. The Gnostic message that you carry heaven within you, that you can awaken now and escape the trap, threatened that power structure. And so, over centuries, the mirror of death was erased from sacred texts, and the Archons were reduced to symbols or forgotten altogether. Even today, few people realize how much was lost when those teachings were destroyed. The Gnostics were not trying to deny faith, they were trying to deepen it. They wanted humanity to see that the real divine is beyond all forms, beyond matter, beyond the false light that imitates the real one. When the soul dies, it must recognize the difference. The mirror of death is beautiful, yes, but like any reflection, it only shows what's already in front of it. The true light cannot be seen with eyes or mirrors. It is felt through awakening. In the next block, we'll uncover the turning point of the revelation, how the Gnostics said one could break free from the Archon's illusion and recognize the real light when death comes. You'll see how this knowledge was not meant to frighten, but to liberate, a guide for the soul to escape the mirror and return home for real. The Gnostics believed that liberation doesn't come after death, it begins before it. They said that the way we live, think, and awaken now determines whether we will recognize the illusion when our final moment arrives. To them, death is not the end, but the ultimate test of consciousness. If you've lived asleep, ruled by fear, anger, desire, and distraction, then at death, the Archons can easily trick you with their mirror. But if you've remembered who you truly are, if you've awakened the divine spark inside, then no illusion can hold you. In Gnostic writings, the soul's greatest defense is knowledge of the self, what they called gnosis. But this isn't intellectual knowledge or memorized beliefs. It's an inner certainty, a lived awareness that you are not the body, not the personality, not even the mind. You are a fragment of the eternal source, temporarily inhabiting a human form. When you truly feel this, fear of death disappears, because you realize you were never alive in the way the world defines life, and you can never truly die. To the Gnostics, the mirror of death appears beautiful because it shows us everything we are attached to: family, comfort, love, success, even light itself. These are not evil. They are simply reflections. But if the soul clings to them, it falls back into the same world it tried to leave. The Archons don't capture you by force. They capture you through your own attachments. Every emotion that ties you to matter becomes a chain that pulls you down. This is why the Gnostics practiced detachment and remembrance while still alive. They trained themselves to see through illusion here, so they could see through it later. Every act of awareness, every moment of inner silence, every realization that I am not this thought, not this fear, not this pain, weakens the power of the Archons. Because the Archons feed on confusion. When you are clear, they vanish. The Book of Thomas the Contender gives a simple but powerful teaching. Those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they will marvel and will reign over all. This means that awakening is not comfortable. It shakes you. It breaks everything you thought was real. But once you see through the illusion, once you recognize that the so-called light of this world is just a reflection of the true light, you become free. The Archons cannot hold a soul that sees clearly. In this way, Gnostic wisdom was not about worshiping or following a savior outside of yourself. It was about realizing that the divine messenger, the Christ, Sophia, or light, already exists within you. When that light awakens, you can navigate death consciously. You can pass through the false mirror without being pulled in. The Gnostics even described the soul's journey after death as a series of recognitions. At each realm, the Archons question you, testing your awareness. If you respond with fear, you fall. If you answer with memory, I come from the true source beyond you, they must let you pass. To them, this wasn't mythology. It was practical guidance for the soul, and the same applies to life now. Every day is a small rehearsal for death. Every illusion you see through, every time you choose truth over appearance, spirit over matter, awareness over reaction, you weaken the mirror of death. You prepare yourself to face it without fear. Many spiritual teachers throughout history have hinted at this same truth in different languages. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of the clear light that appears at the moment of death and warns that only the trained mind can recognize it. Mystics in early Christianity spoke of dying before you die, meaning awakening to your divine nature while still alive. Even modern near-death experiencers describe a moment when they realize that not all light feels the same, that there is a difference between the light that comforts and the light that calls you home. So how do we apply this Gnostic wisdom today? Begin by questioning everything that keeps you asleep. Ask yourself daily, who is watching these thoughts? Who feels this fear? Where does my awareness truly come from? These questions sound simple, but they open a door inside. They turn your attention away from the mirror and back toward the source of light behind it. If death is the final test, then awareness is the preparation. And the Gnostics would say, do not wait until your last breath to remember who you are. The time to awaken is now, because the soul that wakes up in life will not be fooled in death. In the next block, we'll uncover what happens when a soul finally escapes the Archon's illusion. What lies beyond the mirror of death? According to ancient Gnostic visionaries, it's not a place of clouds or judgment, but something far more mysterious and beautiful than we've been taught. When the soul finally escapes the mirror of death, the Gnostics said, something extraordinary happens. The illusion dissolves. The false light, which once appeared warm and beautiful, suddenly looks like what it truly is, a faint imitation of the real radiance. The freed soul begins to feel a vibration, a kind of deep remembering that words cannot describe. This is not a place in the sense of a heaven or kingdom. It is a state of pure being, beyond all forms, shapes, and images. It is what the Gnostics called the pleroma, the fullness. To understand this, imagine a drop of water falling into the ocean. When it merges, it doesn't disappear. It becomes part of something vast, alive, and intelligent. In the same way, the soul that escapes the Archons does not lose its identity. It expands into unity. The Gnostics said that in this moment, the soul remembers everything, not as memories from this life, but as a deep knowing that it was never separate from the source, never trapped, never truly in darkness. The entire experience of birth, suffering, and death was like a dream, necessary for learning, but not the final truth. In the Apocryphon of John, the risen Christ appears to John and reveals that the pleroma is the true home of all divine sparks. It is beyond the demiurge, beyond matter, beyond time. It is pure consciousness, love, and awareness. Those who return there do not worship. They remember. They become co-creators with the divine. The Gnostics said that the soul that reaches this state no longer needs to reincarnate. It is free from the circle of illusion because it has recognized itself as part of the eternal. This revelation is why Gnosticism was so feared. It removed the need for external authority. A soul that knows it can merge directly with the source cannot be controlled through fear of punishment or promise of reward. It cannot be manipulated by the idea of sin, judgment, or hell, because it understands that those were creations of the lower realms, mirrors designed to keep humanity obedient. The church, the rulers, and even unseen powers needed people to believe that they required guidance, forgiveness, and permission to reach the divine. But the Gnostics taught that you are already divine. You don't need permission to awaken. You only need to remember. Beyond the mirror of death, the Gnostics described luminous beings who help guide the awakened souls. These are not Archons, but eons, emanations of the true divine light. Names like Sophia, Marbello, and Christos appear often in the texts. They represent aspects of consciousness, wisdom, love, truth, that aid the soul in its final return. When the soul meets these beings, it does not kneel. It recognizes them as part of itself. There is no hierarchy, no fear, only reunion. In some Gnostic visions, the soul's journey through these luminous realms is described as passing through veils of sound and color, each one more subtle than the last. The deeper the soul moves, the less form there is. Eventually, it reaches a state of total stillness, not emptiness, but infinite peace. There are no questions left to ask, because the seeker and the truth are now the same. This description might remind you of other mystical traditions, the nirvana of Buddhism, the Ein Sof of Kabbalah, the clear light of Tibetan teachings. These are all different languages pointing to the same experience. The Gnostics simply expressed it in the language of their time. What is remarkable is that across cultures, the message remains the same. The real light is not seen with eyes, but known with being. Now, let's bring this back to the human experience. According to Gnostic philosophy, glimpses of this true light can be experienced even while alive. In moments of deep silence, unconditional love, or sudden clarity, you might feel something that words cannot describe, a presence beyond thought, beyond fear. That, they would say, is the echo of the pleroma. The soul recognizes its origin, even if only for a second. These moments are like windows opening beyond the mirror, reminders of what waits beyond death for those who awaken. But what happens if the soul does not escape the mirror? Gnostics said it simply returns to the cycle, born again into the material world, with no memory of its past lives. It continues learning, slowly collecting fragments of remembrance through suffering, joy, and experience. They believe that even this repetition has purpose. Every lifetime is a chance to awaken. The Archons can distort and delay, but they cannot destroy the divine spark. Eventually, every soul will remember. The question is when. That is why this teaching is not meant to create fear, but to inspire urgency. The mirror of death isn't evil. It's part of the test. It reflects the soul's attachments so they can be overcome. Each life is a classroom. Each death a graduation exam. The more conscious you become now, the easier it will be to recognize the false light later. For the Gnostics, enlightenment was never about escaping the world in anger or despair. It was about seeing through it with understanding. The illusion loses its power when you understand its purpose. The Archons can no longer feed on fear because you no longer fear them. You see them as actors in a play, part of a cosmic drama designed to help the soul remember what it really is. Beyond the mirror of death, there is no time, no matter, no longing, only the endless living light. And when the soul finally returns there, it realizes something profound. It never truly left. The entire journey, through darkness, illusion, and death, was a path of remembering what was always within. In the next block, we'll reach the reflective climax, how this ancient revelation connects directly to our lives today. You'll see how the same Archons that manipulate the soul after death also shape our thoughts, fears, and desires while we're alive, and how recognizing their influence here may be the first step to freedom beyond the mirror. The Gnostics never meant the mirror of death to be understood only as something that appears when we die. They saw it as a reflection of what is happening every day, right now, in the living. The Archons, they said, do not wait for the moment of death to deceive the soul. They work through the mind, through emotion, through culture and systems. The world itself is their mirror, and we live inside it, confusing reflection for reality. When you look around at modern life, the ancient warning suddenly feels prophetic. The Gnostics described a world where invisible rulers feed on human distraction and fear. Does that not sound familiar? They said the Archons whisper through influence, not through demonic possession or visible control, but through subtle suggestion. They shape what people believe is normal, what they desire, and even what they fear. In today's world, those forces could be seen through technology, media, endless consumption, and the addiction to appearance over truth. Every image, every product, every false promise of happiness is part of the same mirror, bright, hypnotic, and hollow. The Archon's true power, the Gnostics said, is imitation. They cannot create, only copy. They take the patterns of the divine, love, beauty, connection, and produce artificial versions. We see this everywhere. Imitation love in superficial relationships, imitation beauty in digital filters, imitation connection in social media. It feels real, but it's empty. The Archons would rather have you chase reflections than seek the real source. Because as long as your eyes are on the mirror, you'll never notice the light behind it. This is why the Gnostics called awakening, dying before you die. They wanted people to recognize the illusion while still alive, to break the mirror before it becomes their prison after death. Every time you believe that happiness depends on possessions, validation, or status, the Archons win. Every time you forget to look within, they tighten their hold. But each moment of self-awareness, when you step back, breathe, and realize, this is not me, this is not what I truly am, cracks the mirror. In the hypostasis of the Archons, one of the texts found at Nag Hammadi, it is written that these beings threw humanity into great distraction and led them astray through forgetfulness. The key word is forgetfulness. The Archons do not conquer through violence. They conquer through amnesia. When you forget your divine origin, you become easy to manipulate. You accept fear as truth, competition as nature, separation as destiny. The Archons, the Gnostics said, feed on that energy. The more confusion, the more chaos, the stronger they become. Think about how fear dominates modern society. Fear of losing status, money, health, even time. It's as if we're always running, always chasing the next goal, never resting. That is not an accident. It's a system of control. The more you rush, the less you reflect. The less you reflect, the more you react. And reaction is the food of the Archons. In this sense, the mirror of death is only the final version of a mirror we stare into all our lives. The Gnostics warned that the Archons also imitate spiritual light. They said that the Demiurge and his servants love religion, not true faith, but empty ritual and dogma. They hide behind sacred names, convincing people that salvation lies in obedience rather than awakening. This is why Gnostics were persecuted by organized religion. They taught that the divine spark inside every human was equal to the power of any priest or ruler. The Archons could not allow that idea to spread, so they built systems that reward belief without understanding, worship without experience, and comfort without truth. Look at how spirituality is marketed today. You can buy crystals, books, and programs that promise enlightenment in 10 steps. But the Gnostics would say that true awakening cannot be sold because it has no form. Anything with a price tag belongs to the mirror. Real knowledge costs you something deeper, the death of illusion, the end of who you thought you were. That is why so few people find it. The mirror offers shortcuts, and humanity loves shortcuts. But the ancient path is still available, hidden in plain sight. It begins with awareness, quieting the noise long enough to see the mirror for what it is. When you observe your thoughts without judgment, you begin to notice how many of them are not truly yours. You see how fear, desire, and comparison repeat endlessly, like programs running on a loop. The Gnostics would call this the voice of the Archons, a mechanical whisper designed to keep your soul asleep. Once you recognize that voice, it loses its power. You stop obeying it. You start to remember your own. To live with this awareness is to begin dismantling the mirror. You start noticing the patterns, the need for validation, the endless scrolling, the constant noise that fills silence with distraction. You start feeling how empty it all is. And in that silence, something else begins to emerge. A light not reflected, but original. That is the divine spark the Gnostics spoke of. It doesn't come from outside. It shines from within when the mind becomes still. They said that the more this inner light grows, the less hold the Archons have. Their illusions become transparent. What once looked frightening now looks like shadow play. What once seemed beautiful now looks artificial. You begin to see the world not as a trap, but as a temporary school, a place for learning how to distinguish truth from imitation. The Archons still try to deceive, but now you recognize the pattern. You can smile at it. You can pass through it. And when you understand this while alive, you prepare your soul for what happens after death. The mirror of death will still appear, but you'll know it's a reflection. You'll recognize the light that feels cold, the voices that sound comforting but empty. You'll remember the Gnostic key. Do not look outward. Turn inward. The source is within. That remembrance is liberation. It's the soul saying, I know this trick. I choose the real light. And in that moment, the mirror shatters. If we think about it, the Archon's mirror exists not only in religion or media, but also in our personal relationships and inner worlds. Every time we project our fears or expectations onto others, we create a small mirror. We stop seeing who they truly are and only see what we want to see. In that sense, we become Archons to one another, creating illusions, feeding on reaction. But the opposite is also true. Every act of compassion, honesty, and self-awareness helps break the mirrors that bind us. That is the real spiritual war, not between gods and demons, but between consciousness and forgetfulness inside each human heart. The Gnostics believed that when enough souls awaken, the entire illusion begins to collapse. The Archons lose their power because their mirror depends on our belief. The system of deception falls apart when we stop feeding it attention. And that, they said, is the true apocalypse, not destruction, but revelation. The word apocalypse in Greek means unveiling. The end of the world is not the burning of matter, but the end of illusion. When humanity collectively remembers its divine origin, the mirror of death will no longer be needed. There will be no trap left to maintain. So, what the Gnostics offered was not a religion of fear, but a science of awakening. They didn't ask people to run from the world. They asked them to see through it, to live awake, not asleep, to face every reflection and ask, is this true, or is this a mirror? In the next block, we'll reach the conclusion, the final reflection that ties together everything you've just heard. We'll revisit the revelation of the mirror of death, the mission of the Archons, and the forgotten power of remembrance that can free the soul forever. And you'll hear a final call, not just to subscribe, but to become part of a living community of seekers who keep this ancient flame of knowledge alive. So now you know what the Gnostics were really trying to say. Death is not the end, it's the mirror, and life itself is a rehearsal for the moment when that mirror appears. Every choice we make, every time we awaken or fall asleep, is a reflection of how ready we are to see beyond illusion. The Archon's greatest trick is not darkness, it's imitation light. They copy truth so well that most souls cannot tell the difference. But now, you can. You've seen how the false light pulls you through comfort, memory, and desire. You've seen how the true light calls through silence, awareness, and remembrance. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. The Gnostics said that when the soul finally remembers its divine spark, The Archons lose all power. Their mirror breaks. The illusion fades. And what remains is the original radiance, the real light, the pleroma, the source from which all things came. That's the purpose of this journey. Not to fear death, but to understand it. Not to reject the world, but to see it clearly. Because once you recognize the mirror, you can walk through it. Now I ask you, what do you think the mirror of death really is? Is it symbolic? Is it real? Or is it something humanity still has to rediscover within itself? Tell me in the comments. Your voice matters, because this isn't just a story. It's a search we all share. If this message spoke to you, subscribe and join this circle of seekers who keep these ancient truths alive. Every new voice strengthens the light that the Archons fear most, awareness. And remember, the true awakening doesn't end with this video. It begins now in you. The search never stops. The mirror can only hold power while you believe it's real. So ask yourself tonight, before you close your eyes, when my final moment comes, will I follow the reflection, or will I remember the light behind it?